everybody, welcome again to another lecture by Untold History. And today's lecture, like we said last week, is going to be about an epic story found in the Bible, which is the story of Noah. And you may recall, as you can see, this is a poster that was released last year about Noah the movie. Seems like Hollywood is taking on to biblical themes lately. Last week we spoke about the Exodus. Now Noah. Both became blockbusters last year, and both deviate from the biblical account a lot. Both movies portray the God of the Bible as a bad God, and that's, as we mentioned before, is a teaching that is found in the Kabbalah, also in Gnostic writings, which are the writings that have been incorporated into secret societies and even into the hidden parts of the Catholic Church, the Vatican. And we'll prove that when we speak about secret societies and the role of the Vatican to establish a new world order. Especially in this movie Noah, what happens is that Noah is portrayed as more loving than God, and that's obviously something that the Bible does not say. No one can be more loving than God, because according to the Bible, God is love. And what this film portrays or gives the impression is that Noah has dreams that there is a flood coming and that God will destroy all life. And then Noah gets the impression, and the idea is given, that after the flood, life will not propagate any further. So the conclusion is that he and his family will die out, and that there is to be no repopulation of the antediluvian world. But then Noah is faced with a dilemma. His daughter-in-law is pregnant, and then Noah deduces that if the child is a boy, the boy can live, but if the child is a girl, it cannot live. Then it turns out that she is pregnant with two girls, and when it comes to the point of carrying out what he believes is the will of God, that's what the movie implies, that God has told him to eradicate all life that is left from the pre-flood world, which is something the Bible doesn't say. Noah is seen as saying to God, no, you are too cruel. He cannot do that. He cannot slay the girls. So a picture of a cruel God is projected in this Hollywood blockbuster. The same way is projected in the movie The Exodus, and the same way is projected in The Truman Show, where the creator of the world where Truman lives is a God, is a creator that doesn't want Truman's happiness. There is things he hides from him and manipulates the events to make his life miserable, and everything is being predetermined. And that's something that the Bible doesn't teach about God. Anyway, let's start now talking about the story as it is found in the Bible. The account is found in the book of Genesis, chapter 6, and we read, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air. For it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Also in the book of Genesis chapter 6, and God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and outside with pitch. And this is how you shall make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. You shall make a window for the ark, and you shall finish it to a cubit from above, and set the door of the ark in its side. You shall make it with lower, second, and third decks. And behold, I myself am bringing flood waters on the earth, to destroy from under heaven all flesh, in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die. Obviously, when you read this text, you might get the idea that God is very severe. Why would God do that? But notice that before he said that the thoughts and the imagination of men was only evil continually. And something that we are not showing here also, but the Bible says, is that for hundreds of years, God was patient, sending messengers, and the last messenger was Noah, to warn the wicked world that the paths they were following will lead them to destruction. So, according to the Bible, rain came down from sky, not just like the rain we see now, but like rain like waterfalls, a huge amount of heavy water falling from high, and also subterranean rain shot forth from under the earth, because the Bible says that the waters of the great deep burst out, and also the windows of heaven were broken up, and water came from the top and also from the bottom. And people think, oh, just rain for 40 days and 40 nights. No, it was a huge catastrophe, global catastrophe according to the Bible. And in the next lecture, we're going to see if there is any evidence around the world that point to a universal flood. And also, what the Bible says is that the waters covered the earth, or Noah and his family remained in the ark for 1 year and 17 days, until the waters receded and they could exit the ark. Genesis chapter 8, and that's very specific. And on the 17th day of the 17th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Also notice that is written in plural. It doesn't say the mountain of Ararat, it says the mountains of Ararat, which is situated in Turkey, eastern border of Turkey, between Turkey and Armenia. And here you have a picture that's the single Mount Ararat, but the mountains of Ararat is a huge set, a long stretch of mountains, which is very high, and conditions can get very tough, especially closer to the top. I think Mount Ararat reaches, or is past the peak is beyond 5,000 meters, so it's a pretty high mountain. And is there any historical record about a boat in those mountains? Yes, there is. Here we read, Berossus the Chaldean, 290 BC, he wrote, "It is said that there is still some part of this ship in Armenia, at the mountain of the Gordians, and that some people carry off pieces of the bitumen, pitch, which is what was used to build the ark, which they take away and use it for amulets. So Berossus is saying people living in Armenia know there is a boat there in those mountains, and they must know is of a sacred significance, must have some sacred significance, because the beach is used for amulets. Is that the only historical record we have? No. I'm not saying that's the ark, okay? I'm just saying that Berossus mentions there was a ship in Armenia, in the same mountains where the Bible says the ark rested. And now the Jew historian, he was Josephus, Jewish birth, who was loyal to the Roman Empire. He was a man of great intellect and a contemporary of the Apostle Paul. He was the official historian of the Jews for the Roman Empire, and he had access to all the archives and libraries of the day. He mentions the remains of Noah's Ark 3 times, and all are found and recorded in his work Antiquities of the Jews. So we also have Josephus 50 AD mentioning Noah's Ark 3 times. And also he was a Jew, he was loyal to the Roman Empire, so he didn't mention the ark for religious reasons. He wasn't blinded by his faith. He was an accurate historian for the Roman Empire. That's what was found. Well, that's a picture taken by a Turkish army captain. He was flying over Ararat, and he saw this strange formation, strange rock formation, and he took a picture. And then is when the story of the legend of Noah's Ark became alive again. And you can see Life magazine, September the 5th, 1960, with the same picture from the air. The ship-shaped outline lies in the center of a landslide on the slope of a mountain that is only 25 miles from the Russian border. And at the bottom says, the photo was shot by a Turkish aerial survey plane from 10,000 feet. And the question, Noah's Ark, boat-like form, is seen near Ararat. And then there was many expeditions. I'll show you just a few now. That's written in Spanish, but I will translate it. That's from a magazine that deals with mysterious events, accounts, excuse me, and says, ¿Sabías que? Did you know that Ararat is a holy mountain for millions of believers from different religions? That's because in the account of Genesis of a universal flood, a global flood, is not an exclusive belief from the Judeo-Christian culture, but is shared for many different doctrines, also from the Islamic world. And then he says, Turkish knew the mount as Agri Dasi, which means mountain of the ark. In contrast, Iranian people call the mountain Kuni Nui, which means the mountain of Noah. And also there is, before Islam, there is record from Babylonian writers also talking about a universal catastrophe, a universal flood, only 8 people being saved by the ark. Some of the specifics of the story are different, but the overall story of a universal flood and a boat being built, only 8 people entering that boat and only 8 people being saved, is something that is common all over the world in different religions and different cultures. Here you can see just a timeline of some of the expeditions that have been to Mount Ararat. Even the CIA. Why would the CIA, why would the Secret Service go to Ararat to see if Noah's Ark is there or not? and also because they have taken loads of pictures from the place, aerial pictures. But something that is missing on this timeline, and we're going to be dealing and talking about him a little bit today, also we spoke about him last week when talking about the Exodus, is the over 30 expeditions that this man, Ron Wyatt, did to the Ararat Mountains. Here is a picture of himself. He died, I believe, in 1999. He was an amateur archaeologist, and he visited this place for a period of 30 years, nearly 30 times, I believe. And that's probably one of the first selfies of the story, of the history. That's to say it correctly. And you can see behind him, that's this boat-like shape, which is a rock formation, which he claimed to be Noah's Ark. Whether you believe it or not, and we're going to show some of the evidence as this lecture goes along, you can see that the rock formation is different from all the rock formations around. And now we'll show you more pictures. Here is another aerial picture. You can see at the bottom left the boat-like shape at the bottom in black and white, and on the right hand side you can see it colored. So you can see that that's a very peculiar rock formation compared with the rest. Here again, another picture in black and white. Government confirms after, in 1987, on June 1987, the Turkish government established the new Noah's Ark National Park, following confirmation by a government commission of the investigative work on a site by the American Ronald E. Wyatt. Government confirms this is Noah's Ark. And here again you see a picture of where this rock formation is found, which is said to be Noah's Ark. And some of you may say, oh, obviously Turkish government is saying this is Noah's Ark because they want the money that this site is going to bring in. All the tourism is going to flock, and it's going to make the government rich, or at least it's going to increase its wealth. So if you are pondering these thoughts in your mind, I just ask you to be patient, stick on, and we're going to see whether this is true or not, and whether this really is Noah's Ark or not. Here you can see a modern picture of Noah's Ark. Notice the scale, the size of this rock formation, because that down there is a 6'5", 6'6", I believe, American scientist that went recently with, I've got a family member that did an expedition here last year, around September, October 2014. He took some scientists with him, and that's an American scientist. And you can see the size of the thing is huge, because that's an American guy that is nearly 7 feet tall. So that's a huge formation. We read, Noah's Ark was 3 stories high, and you can find that in Genesis 6:16. We read it earlier on. Lower deck, second deck, and then the third deck. Its total deck area was equivalent to the area of about 20 standard college basketball courts or 36 lawn tennis courts. So it was pretty big for that time. Remember, Noah the date is around 3000 BC. So it's a long time ago to build such a big boat. The world had to wait until AD 1884. Imagine how long the world had to wait before the ark's size was exceeded, when the Italian liner Etruria was built. The rectangular dimensions of the ark show an advanced design in shipbuilding. Its length of 6 times its width and 10 times its height would have made it amazingly stable on the ocean. Remember, it was made more for floating than sailing, because it wasn't headed anywhere. The ark was made to withstand a turbulent ocean voyage, not to be at a certain place at a certain time. Interestingly, British civil and mechanical engineer Isambard Kingdom Brunel built a steamship, the Great Britain, in 1843 that had almost the same proportions as the ark, although it was smaller. This was regarded as a remarkable feat of Victorian and maritime engineering. The Great Britain was the first large vessel to be propelled by a screw propeller. So here, these arguments are just to show you that the ark was not just a little boat like it is depicted on some Bible books or storybooks for children. No, it was a huge boat. It was large, big and heavy. And as you can see, something that was not surpassed in a couple of centuries ago. So it was a big enterprise to build such a big ship. Here you can see a comparison of how big Noah's Ark was 515 feet long, so longer than a football stadium. Much longer than a football stadium. I think that equals nearly 150 meters, so it's very long. You can see the comparison with a plane, a passenger's plane, is over double the size of a passenger's plane. And at the bottom we can read, the ark would have had a carrying capacity greater than 520 stock railroad freight cars. It was the largest wooden vessel ever built. Here you can see a modern picture of the structure, this boat-like shape structure. So you can clearly see the difference between all the rock formations around and what I believe it is Noah's Ark. Also, as we mentioned earlier on, the length of this boat-like shaped object is exactly the same measurements that are given in the Bible for Noah's Ark. Here, that's a picture taken from the side of this rock formation, and you can see clearly difference on look like columns. That's the site, as I said, and that's the petrified ribs of the boat. Here you can see it even better. And soon I'm going to show you a video when you can see this with better explanations. Also, here there are some marks that were taken, some ribbon, and that was put and set up following a certain pattern because there were some readings done, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Here you can see the whole length of the structure of the boat. It's pretty big. More readings, more marks. That's very interesting. That's a hole that Ron Wyatt and his team made right at the bottom of one of those ribs. They dug out a really long hole right underneath the structure, and they took out something from there, and I'll tell you when this lecture finishes what they took from here. That's a modern scan taken also from one of the sides of the ark, and you can see the scan showed that structure has compartments inside, rooms and compartments, which is what the Bible says. And now here you're going to see a little video about one of the expeditions made by Ron Wyatt. So listen carefully.
Around this area that Ron believed to be embedded petrified wood, he found specimens of rock which looked very unique to him. He took several samples, along with several specimens from the boat shape below. Back home, he sent them for analysis. The results showed organic carbon, which indicated that the samples were consistent with decayed and fossilized wood. They also contained metals such as iron and aluminum. The analysis of the strange-looking rock Ron had found about 1.5 miles above the site by the bottom of the ship was clearly the most exciting. His initial analysis had shown it to be metals and not rock. In 1984, Ron met and became friends with Colonel Jim Irwin, the former astronaut. Colonel Irwin was searching for Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat, but he was very gracious and was interested in seeing the boat-shaped site. Ron had brought a metal detector to the site to see if there was a pattern of metal readings. In the presence of Colonel Irwin and others on his team, Ron employed the detectors. He found distinct metal lines down the entire length of the object, while no metal readings were obtained just outside of it. Ron asked Colonel Irwin, who had impressive scientific community connections, if he could have the strange specimen tested. Colonel Irwin sent the specimen to Los Alamos National Labs, where geophysicist John Baumgartner performed the analysis. The results of that analysis captured Dr. Baumgartner's interest. The specimen contained manganese, also titanium and aluminum, among others, and these were not in the form found in nature. Due to the sophistication of the metals, he questioned whether a missile had crashed on the mountainside and Ron had found the remains. The exciting evidences of the metal lines and the analysis of the specimens brought 2 new researchers into the work. Dr. Baumgartner and David Fassel, the marine salvage expert who knew all about ships and their construction. They both joined the team.
Oh, look at that. Oh, well, wait a minute. Let me get a close-up of that. Kind of,
You want my hand in there for...
Yeah, just to point at those little flakes of iron that are coming out, like right there. There and there. Huh. That's a strong reading. Well,
I'd save those frames right there.
okay. Keep walking. Do you want a measuring tape to measure these things, how far apart they are?
John, as a scientist, might I take the liberty here to ask you, do you really honestly believe that you have been on the remains of Noah's Ark?
I have no doubt in my mind. This has to be a man-made structure. It's full of metal. The metal has a regular pattern to it, and the size of the thing and the shape of the thing is such that it's almost certainly a large.
Dr. Baumgartner and Ron scanned the entire site with 3 different types of metal detectors. Placing rocks at each metal reading, they then attached tapes to show the lines. This exciting evidence also attracted the interest of ABC's 2020.
The boat-shaped site was first found and photographed by a Turkish army captain back in 1959. It was quickly explored and dismissed as a freak of nature. But Wyatt, an amateur archaeologist, rekindled interest in it a few years ago. He brought in Dave Fassel, a marine salvage expert, to assess it. The Doomsday Mountain team brought in some high technology to explore the oldest legend of man. They began scanning their site with a molecular frequency generator. It's a device used by surgeons to pinpoint cancer tumors, and it's been used by Fassel to locate underwater treasure. This time, the molecular frequency generator began to pick up a unique pattern of iron lines beneath the earth.
Okay, bring that one up.
They began placing ribbons along those lines. The finished shape, outlined by the ribbons, was that of a huge ship, the approximate length and width of Noah's Ark, as described in the Bible. The fascinating field of ribbons soon attracted higher academic interest.
That looks like iron. Okay.
Dr. John Baumgartner, a physicist with Los Alamos Laboratories, sent samples back to the lab for analysis and confirmed that the metal they were tracing with the ribbons was indeed iron. With the width and the length known, the only remaining question was depth. By locating the depth of the hull, they could determine if the boat-shaped object had the cargo capacity described in the biblical ark. To resolve this final issue, Wyatt and Fassel brought geologist Tom Finner to Turkey with his company's heavy-duty subsurface radar equipment. Gear like this located the black box cockpit recorder on the floor of the frozen Potomac River after the Air Florida crash. It was here, several miles short of the boat-shaped site, that a waiting game began for Finner and the others. The party needed a final go-ahead from the Turkish government to complete their probe of Doomsday Mountain. The restrictions of martial law left the American explorers isolated from the outside world. Not even a telephone.
Anyway, we're going to hang in like smell on a skunk till there's nothing left. Get this done.
Hanging like the smell on a skunk. The Turkish government stopped the exploration. What now?
Since we were there, Barbara, things have cooled down, and they've sent their own team of scientists in to take a look at this site. It's a very fascinating location.
While Turkish scientists and archaeologists did their own research, Ron and his associates continued their work. The next step was subsurface interface radar.
There's the longitudinal bulkhead. You ought to see them popping out, Ron.
Yeah, there they are.
Here's
Yeah.
another one. There's the keel line right there.
Yeah.
Oh, Ron, the lines are there. The lines are there.
Okay, we're going to walk over,
Yeah, let's walk.
take a look.
Leave it running so everybody knows that we're not cheating here, right?
You got it, Cole.
Okay. Now, this is the west bulkhead. Okay, can you look through there and...
All right,
This is the west bulkhead.
all right.
That was over there. And he walked easterly. Here we start getting the longitudinal bulkheads. Here, 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 here.
Okay.
Here. You see there how it shows up?
Right.
The initial scans were very impressive, showing internal structure consistent with bulkheads and rooms. But to be sure they were interpreting the data correctly, Ron took the scan printouts to Geophysical Survey Systems, the developer and manufacturer of the radar.
This data does not represent natural geology. It's a man-made structure. These reflections are occurring very periodic, too periodic to be random natural type interface.
There was no longer any doubt that this was the remains of something man-made. In late 1986, the Turks announced their decision. The ceremony was set for June 1987. During that ceremony, the governor asked Ron to demonstrate the radar on site for the journalists and military officials. When Ron showed them a readout that he said looked like an intact timber, the governor then instructed a soldier to dig right there. What emerged was this petrified section of fossilized hand-wrought timber. Sectioning showed it to be laminated wood, 5 layers of timber glued together with pitch, clearly visible oozing from the end. This fossilized specimen shows that rivets were used in its construction. Their analysis showed that they contained iron, titanium, and aluminum, among other things, very sophisticated alloys that would be resistant to water. In 1990, Ron performed what he called a mini excavation, where he took shovels and bent the blades into a giant razor. He and his associates then shaved off a very thin layer from one section, smoothing it to show the color difference between the structure members and the matrix.
Okay, so after watching this short clip, just think about it and you can take your own conclusions. Let's carry on with the lecture. And now we're going to talk about Noah's Ark anchors. I'm going to show you some pictures of these huge stone anchors that were all found around the site of Noah's Ark. What is very interesting is that they are bigger than normal anchors. In actual fact, they are not anchors per se. They were used as in the Mediterranean, boats would use them to stabilize the boat, so the boats would not flip or tip over. But now I'm going to show you a picture of a normal Mediterranean anchor and compare the size with this. These anchors are in between 6 and 8 feet. They weigh up to 2 tons. And what is very interesting, that they have Byzantine crosses, because obviously someone around the 10th, 12th century thought that these anchors meant something. They had a religious meaning because they draw crosses on these anchors, and many of these anchors, they have 8 crosses. And remember the story of Noah in the Bible? Only 8 people entered the ark. Noah, his wife, their 3 children, 3 sons, and the 3 daughters-in-law, the sons' wives. And also what's interesting is that many of these anchors, as I said, have 8 crosses. One cross is bigger than the others, representing Noah. Then a cross follows in size, representing Noah's wife. And then there is 6 crosses, which are the same size, representing Noah's sons and the wives. Here again, another one of these stones. Some of them are standing up, so some others are laying on the floor. But they all have this thing in common. They all have Byzantine crosses, and they have this hole at the top, and they are huge. That's another one of them, those stones, anchors. Here you can see again 8 crosses. And this is a normal Mediterranean anchor, stabilizer anchor. Notice again it's got that rounded hole at the top. And here you can see the comparison. They were used, as I said, rope would be attached to them, they would sink, and the weight of the stones would keep the boat from tipping or flipping over. And notice, as I mentioned, that hole at the top is made in such a way that when rope was introduced and the stone was hanged and sank, the rope would not snap. So obviously bigger anchors are for a bigger boat, and all these stones are found around the site of Noah's Ark. Do you think that's a coincidence? And now we're going to examine also that was found, is believed to be the cover of Noah's Ark. As we read earlier on, God instructed Noah to also build a window, and that's believed to be the cover on that window. That's the one I just said. as you can see, is petrified wood. Here is the expedition from one of my family members with some scientists from Spain and also from North America. Also they had a few Turkish guides. Here you can see the full size of this cover, which is different than anything that is found around the area. You can see everything is pretty flat, smooth, and you can see there is some rocks around, but looks like quite barren. And then suddenly you find this big petrified piece of wood here in the middle of nowhere, just close to Noah's Ark. Here you can see again the petrified wood, and they took a piece to be examined. That's the one. The one on the left is the bark from this petrified wood, which is the cover for Noah's Ark, and at the right hand side you see the bark and the wood from a cypress tree, a modern cypress tree. And can you see the comparison? Both barks look very similar. Can you see the lines, the shape on the lines, that pattern? And that was examined by a biologist. Here again you can see the comparison. Same type of bark for a cypress tree, and the comparison again. And here is a different type of bark, but also from a tree which belongs to the family of cypress. That's bark from sequoia. And notice the pattern is the same, those lines that form. Obviously the one at the left hand side is ancient and it's been petrified, but the pattern is exactly the same. Here is how it was analyzed. And it comes from the Cupressaceae, or cypress family. According to Genesis 6:14, the ark was made of gopher wood, had compartments, which we've seen, and was covered in pitch. Gopher wood, as it is found in Genesis 6:14, comes from two Hebrew words, one meaning wood to house in, a kind of a tree, and also cypress, gopher, and the other one is tree, wood, carpenter, gallows, helve, pine, plank, staff, stalk. So it's gopher wood, which is wood from the cypress, or the cypress family. And that's a huge sequoia which belongs to the cypress family, which the bark is equal, exactly the same as the bark found on that petrified big piece of wood found next to Noah's Ark, which indicates it to be the cover. More sequoias. That's a huge sequoia found in North America. And now, let's see the conclusions of what we've seen on this lecture. First, the boat-shaped-like object is found in the same place the Bible mentions, that is Mount Ararat. Second, the object found in Mount Ararat has the same dimensions, the width, the length and height, as the dimensions for Noah's Ark given in the Bible. Third, the object found in Ararat has compartments, laminated wood, metal and rivets, which indicate it's a man-made structure. Fourth, many big anchor stones between 8 and 11 foot and weighing up to 2 tons are found all around the area, including various kilometers of diameter. Fifth, the majority of anchors have 8 crosses. Sixth, the wood dug out is the same type of wood mentioned in the Bible, that's gopher, which is cypress wood, or redwood, which is cypress and sequoias. Seventh, a village near the remains of the ark is known as the village of 8, and a nearby valley is known as the valley of the 8. So that's a clear reference to the 8 people that, according to the Bible, entered the ark and were the only ones to be saved. And 8th, remember I told you about that little hole that Ron Wyatt and his colleagues dug on one of the sides of the ark, and they extracted something? That's what they extracted. Petrified animal dung, a petrified antler, and an ancient piece of cat hair were also retrieved from the remains of the ark. So seeing these conclusions, I'm not going to tell you what to believe. The choice is yours. I'm only presenting what I believe is clear evidence that this is Noah's Ark and that the Bible is accurate. And next week, we'll see whether this flood took place or not. We're going to examine different sites all around the world and see whether there is evidence that this global flood took place or not. Because some scientists say, okay, yes, there is catastrophism, we see evidence of catastrophism, but a global flood, never. So stick with us. Thank you for watching. And once again, this is Untold History. Here you have our email. If you have any questions, you can contact us there. And also our website, where we put up our lectures and some other information relevant to unmask the New World Order. And as usual, you can find us in YouTube and Facebook. Thank you for watching. See you next week.